for the first question here. Coach Fuller.
Coach Norvell was saying that one of the challenges he feels like is getting the guys to transition what they do in practice to the field on game day. I'm sure that's not the first time that's happened. Like, what are some things you guys can do to help that process?
Experience of doing it the right way and having it carry over. You know, when we make it a bigger deal of what it is, you got to practice well to have a chance to play well, and then you got to transition that to the next, which I think is your question, right? And so I just think, you know, you're trying to mount on success, whether it's in practice or whether it's in the game. So, I mean, there's no question we need to transition. You know, is practice perfect? No, but I do adhere with Mike that I do think our guys are going about their work in the right way. You know, as coaches, we got to continue to reevaluate. Okay, if you think it's successful in practice, it's not translating, go back and maybe look at the structure you're doing in practice and maybe giving them the situations in maybe a different way. You know, because it's never acceptable to fail. And so you're constantly trying to reevaluate what you're doing in the practice to have it carry over to the game. You know, we've had points here that we played really good in the first half and didn't come out great in the second half, or vice versa. We've tried to bring those situations into practice to try to replicate those situations. You know, in the game, you know, I wish I could say, hey, listen, it was just this third down play, and then we would fix that. But you know, we got to obviously do a better job in the run game, which will create better opportunities on third down to be better, and then we got to play better in the red zone. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we're addressing, hopefully coming out of this week as we get another week to work on these things. You know, we see those things show up on game day, which is obviously what everybody wants, players included.
Chris?
How has tackling been in the two games? And with the fact that there's not a whole lot of taking people down to the ground in practice anymore, how do you go about fixing tackling in real time?
Yeah, well, there's fundamentals to tackling, and you know, we work hard at it in practice. You know, for first question, how has it been in the game? Not good enough. And you know, there's all different types of tackles, but you know, everybody's got the same challenge. You know, it's not a Florida State thing that all of a sudden we tackle less in practice. It's just the execution of what you're asking the players to do, who you're asking to do it, and what situations they're being put in. You know, and you have to believe as a defender that tackling is always up to you. It has nothing to do with the opponent. Skill level, the type of situation you're in the tackling. So, you know, we've worked a lot of different drills. We continue to work it. It was a big emphasis here in the last week, even coming out of it. We've gone about and sometimes we supplement some of the tackle drills with some sled work. Sometimes we do it with some space. Sometimes we do it with other humans. You know, the standard of what it's got to look like when you are practicing against our offense or our scout teams, making sure that finish is the best way you can make it so that it does show up on game day. So, you know, listen, our job is to obviously stop the ball, whether it's getting it back or creating stops, and tackling is a big part of it. So we're trying to get the right guys in the right positions to do it with the right technique and get that to happen again and again.
Jordan?
Coach, after the game on Monday, Cam Riley and DJ Lundy said that the guys weren't fully trusting each other on defense, that players were almost trying too hard. Did you notice that too while going back and watching the film, and how do you sort of course correct that?
Yeah, I don't, you know, I respect what Cam and DJ said about, you know, pressing or trying too hard, whatever. You know, I understand what they mean by that. I don't think that's real from a standpoint, but I do think it's real of just when you're playing football and you know you've worked it all week and okay, this is how it's going to play, and then maybe it doesn't get done really clean. So the next time it happens, all right, I got to make sure I do this and then react to this, and that's when things start to break down. And you know, I think to play defense nowadays, you've got to be able to understand where the leverages are, trust your teammates, make sure things are getting executed so that you can go execute in a fast, clean way. And you know, DJ's been in the defense for a number of years. You know, Cam's getting the reps, but I think Cam will tell you, you know, that some of that showed up on Monday where, you know, I've got this job to do, this happens, my reaction time just wasn't fast enough. And so, you know, we're trying to invest every second of every week we can to make sure those reactions happen in a way that we're having success on game day.
Kurt?
The third downs, especially early in that Boston College game, I know the wheel route seemed like a bit of a thing, but I guess was there a common theme of was it? I know Coach Riddle talked about communication or things like that. I guess a common theme of what was going wrong.
On third downs?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, on third downs, you know, we lump them all together, right, of what third downs are. And, you know, going back to the Georgia Tech and the red zone, right, you know, there's red zone stops, there's third down stops. They're all not the same, but the end result needs to be the same, which is getting the stop. You know, 3rd and 1s and 2s are a little bit different than 10s and 11s. So first things first is we're trying to create as many of the longer situations as possible because that's obviously to our advantage. You know, on the 1s, 2s, and 3s, you're trying to make a decision of how aggressive to be, because obviously the more aggressive you are, that leaves you light on a couple other areas. But you know, our third down defense it hasn't been good enough. You know, in a lot of those situations have been in the mediums to shorts. And so, you know, if you go through it for the entire year and you're defending a lot more of the 3rd and 4s, the 3s, the 2s, the 1s, it's going to be hard. And, you know, you got to get stops in those distances. You know, but I think the first things first is we got to go play better on 1st and 2nd down, right? And create those longer situations so that we can really be the aggressor. But no matter what happens, I mean, however it gets to be third down, obviously our goal, we got to get off the field. We got to do a better job. And whether that comes to trusting your fits, trusting your leverage, or making the tackles, you know, as Chris brought up, you know, those are all things that are ingredients to playing better defense.
Ira?
How would you evaluate the defensive line and especially from game 1 to game 2? Any different or similar?
A little bit better, Ira. I thought, especially in the A and B gaps, I thought we were a little bit more physical and stout at the point of attack. On some of those inside runs, I think we can be a lot better on the edges of just making sure our eyes are right. And, you know, there were some really good clips, you know, that we tried to make sure, hey, this is what we do it right. This is what it looks like. But there was still too many space created plays. And, you know, whether that was because of footwork, whether that was because of eyes, whether it was because of this play might happen, let me defend it and then fall back to my main job. You know, so those are all things that, you know, have to be tightened up from the outside in. But I think from the inside out, I did feel better presence, better point of attack physicality. Was it good enough? No. But the question of was it better? I did feel it was.
Aslan?
When it comes to like some of the pre-snap stuff at the 2nd and the 3rd level where guys are communicating to each other before the snap, and are the right things being seen and communicated, and how can the guys make sure that the message is being heard when a guy's yelling out a change to a teammate?
Yeah, well, those things have to happen in practice, which build the trust. And, you know, there are definitely ways that communicating gets checked off, right? You know, I've always said there needs to be a communicator, it needs to be loud, concise, and clear, but there's got to be a listener too. And there's got to be confirmation of those listeners so everybody understands, okay, we are on the same page. Because it's not like grammar where there's a comma, then a period, then a question, then it doesn't happen that way. Sometimes things happen quickly, sometimes they happen more deliberately. And those are all based off the offense's tempo or how quickly the motions happen or the shifts happen. You know, but those are things that we practice constantly, and you're never gonna be exactly clean for the rest of the year at any point in practice, right? It takes consecutive communications in each day. There needs to be a standard because it does carry over, but you can't take anything for granted within that. Whether that comes to defending the wheel route or it becomes the leveraging the run. You know, tackling is tackling, but you know, I do think, you know, we are getting better at it. You know, we are playing some players, and you know, the reason we're playing a good amount of players is because we're trying to get better. You know, we're trying to find the real right combination of guys and making sure we have the right guys playing with each other. And I wish I had it, hey, this is exactly how it's going to be for the rest of the year, but it's not that way yet. And so, you know, the communication allows you to play faster and allows you to trust each other. And, you know, those are something that, you know, are fully emphasized, but I got to continue to find ways to maybe emphasize it in different ways. And that's the job of mine.
Jordan?
Coach, following up on the defensive line, all the starters have played well over 50% of the snaps through 2 games so far. Has that mostly been because of the way the games have played out, or do you expect them to play that much, throughout the season?
Well, for sure the first game, because of the low snap count. Some of these, you put both those games together, we never say, hey, this one is gonna play a little bit more than 50% of the game. But typically, if you're in these games that are, full 4-quarter games, the reps are probably gonna play a little bit closer that way. It's when you really, those starters drop below 50% is usually when you're in really good position in the game, you're able to a little bit more freely roll them. But we want to play at least 8 to 9 defensive linemen. That's how we believe in winning the football game. And at the end of the day, that's the job. We're trying to win the game. And so, whether that comes to maybe a starter's got to play less because he's not playing well, and then those numbers are going to change a little bit. We emphasize to get Nussi in there more game 2 than we did game 1. And there'll be other instances of that. But as the weeks go by in practice, sometimes guys are more limited, and maybe the reps are going to change. Then they become more active in the game, and so definitely all things that we're looking at.
Is obviously Coach Silverfield was there when you guys were there. Has he changed the offense much, and what kind of challenges do they present?
Well, this is his second offensive coordinator, so it's changed a little bit in that way. Ryan's a really good football coach. He's an O-line coach by trade. But I would say the offense has changed since, Coach Norvell left. I think it was more similar than when they made the last coordinator change and they hired Tim Cramsey, who I coached with at Marshall University for my last year there. So I think it has changed some. There are some similarities with what they do up front. And again, Ryan's the head football coach, so I'm sure he's got a big hand on it.
Do a couple more, Aslan.
Coach, when it comes to getting all these things fixed, is it laying everything out that we need to get fixed, or do you guys look at it more methodically as we get this thing fixed first, that'll kind of be a waterfall effect where it'll make this thing easier to correct and then that thing easier to correct and things like that?
Yeah, I think for sure, right? When you're talking about maybe stopping a run, you can't say, well, you just do this and stop that run, and then the next one is gonna be wide open, right? So I think every decision you make, obviously it could filter through other things, right? You can't just say, well, they're gonna run the ball, make sure you put everybody in this position. Well, then if they do this, but I do think, us being able to establish a better job of up front, at linebacker, tackling in the back end, supporting the run, and then making sure that you're good on the plays, off of those plays, I think is primary. But it starts with, just being more secure, in the run game and making sure we're doing a much better job with that. But understanding that anytime you find a solution, that solution can't just be to stop that one problem. Initially it needs to be, or else you'll keep facing it. But then the reaction to, what people will do when you solve something is, there's gotta be a reaction of thinking ahead on that as well.
We got Bob up front for the last one.
Coach Blake Nicholson got the start, Juice Cryer got some playing time. For those guys to get significant reps, it may not have always looked good, but they can go over film with you, they can apply it in practice, those kind of corrections, those learning experiences. Have you kind of seen, how is that growth development part of their learning process?
You see the confidence, you see, there's really, I do believe that the more intense you are in your preparation, it creates some form of experience. But there is some forms of, you've got to be out there to be able to be in the mix, to be able to have to go through those communications with, different people and be able to have to react to things that happen to you on the field, that both Blake and Juice are really, it's happening for them for the first time in true live action. And I think we're seeing the growth in Blake. Want to continue to see that. And then, with Juice, obviously game 1 didn't see much action. Game 2 saw a lot more. And, he's earned the right to get those opportunities, because I do believe, he loves this team, he loves football, and I do believe that he gets a lot better every time we put him out there.
Okay, thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Thanks, man.